The president wants to spy on 200 million Americans without a warrant. Has he read this document, which he was sworn to uphold?
Now, I will not have you libel Abraham Lincoln.
I don't understand the problem with registering guns. We register cars.
Mark Levine brings you the news the government doesn't want you to know.
Today, an explosive story about connections between white supremacists and Islamic terrorists.
When there's a conflict between Scalia's conservative values and the Constitution of the United States, he throws away the Constitution.
We do have secret prisons. That is not what America's all about.
Let's go to Mark in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Good evening, America. Welcome to the Inside Scoop. The May jobs report came out, and it wasn't a pleasant one. The jobs did increase. The private jobs, in fact, increased by about 75,000, but the government jobs decreased by 5,000 or so, which has actually been an ongoing pattern throughout the President Obama's administration. The public sector jobs decrease as the private sector jobs increase. Republicans were pleased as punch. As the economy goes into the toilet, there's nothing that could cheer the Mitt Romney's campaign more. Meanwhile, a lot of people are turning their focus to Europe, recognizing that the European problems are coming home to roost. To debate the economy, I have invited a frequent guest here on the Inside Scoop, Mark Levine, Republican strategist, president of Intelligence Strategies. I am Mark Levine. Let's get right to the debate. So the jobs numbers came out. The Republicans couldn't seem to hide their glee. This, of course, is something that Rush Limbaugh had said that he wants President Obama to fail, and Mitch McConnell famously said that his first priority is Barack Obama, a one-term president. And listen, I've said right there on this show, the economy will determine the election in November. Things were going pretty good, and now they've hit a turn in the road. That makes your party happy.
It doesn't, Mark, actually. Rush Limbaugh aside, this is not good news.
No, it's not.
And it's not good news for anyone. We're talking about exclusive of the election. We're talking about people's lives here. We're talking about people's livelihood. We're talking about their economic well-being in their community. We're talking about their homes. We're talking about their families. And so it's never good news, and I don't think Republicans per se are gleeful about this whole thing. We want the economy to improve. We do think the president is going about it the wrong way, but we want the economy to improve.
Let's talk about the right way to make the economy improve. Before we do that, I just want to dissect these numbers a little bit, because last month, as the unemployment rate dipped to 8.0%, the Republicans complained that it was dipping because Americans were leaving the job market, and that was the main reason for the numbers falling, which was true. This month, interestingly, more Americans joined the job market, but so actually you had a 0.2%, the unemployment rate would have dropped 0.2% if it hadn't been for the Americans joining the market, as it ticked up a notch to 0.1%, but you don't seem to see people making that other argument. We actually had better jobs growth this month than last month, but more people joined the jobs market, so that had a dip
Mark,
down.
I think the number that really illustrates where we are on that is what's called the U6 number. And the U6 number for the end of May is now at 14.8%. That's up 2%. For our viewers who are not familiar with it, U6 is the total of unemployed, underemployed, people who have been discouraged and left the job market, et cetera. So that's the big conglomeration of everybody who would like to have a job or a better job, et cetera. And that's at 14.8. That's a huge number, and we need to find some way to cooperate to bring that number down, as well as the 8.3, 8.1, 8.5. That'll bounce around depending on how discouraged people are.
Now, of course, the number is dramatically down from 2008 when George Bush was president. And it strikes me that Mitt Romney's economic plans, when you compare them to George W. Bush's, are practically the same. He says no regulation and lower taxes for rich people and tax the poor people more. That's what Eric Cantor said just this week. The Paul Ryan plan, slash Medicare and so forth. It seems to me that Romney is warmed over Bush. And so I'd like to know very specifically, as I know you are a longtime supporter of Mitt Romney, what it is that is in his economic plan that wasn't in George Bush's economic plan.
Well, first of all, let me recharacterize your characterization of the Paul Ryan plan. It's not slash Medicare. it's means test Medicare and make sure that people who need Medicare, it's going to be there as a viable program for them. As I've said to you on this show many times, there's no reason why Medicare ought to be paying for George Soros's or Bill Gates's.
But that's not what the Ryan plan does. Let's face it. That's one of the things it does. But the other thing it does, it takes away the guaranteed medical. It basically brings you to a voucher program.
It creates a voucher,
and if your voucher is enough to cover your disease, you're just going to have to suffer the disease. And if you get cancer and the voucher is enough to pay for the cancer, you won't get treatment.
That's not true.
Sure it is.
No.
It's a voucher. It has a limit. There's a maximum amount of payout.
Look, people are going to have control back over their own medical care instead of the government deciding for them what medical care they need to pay for, and et cetera. It's a good plan.
I love the Republican Orwellian speak. No, I mean, this is really great here. You have control over your Medicare when if you can't afford it, you don't get it. You don't have control when if you can't afford it, you do get it. Most people see if you can't afford it, getting it being a good thing.
There will be a lively, vibrant market of alternative plans out there for people to study and pick and choose from, and I think most Americans would think that would be much more beneficial than having the government tell them what they're going to get.
Well, as you know, and we're getting a little off topic here, but you brought it up.
Off topic.
We are off topic, but you know what? You brought it up. Let's go there because, of course, the president's plan, the Democratic plan.
I brought it up. You were the one who called, Ryan's plan slash and burn.
That's true. That's true. But my point is that is Mitt Romney's plan. Mitt Romney has adopted Paul Ryan's plan. I mean, I don't mind talking about
He says it's good. I think you'll see changes in it. I don't know what those changes will be, but I think you'll see changes in it.
My point is this. George Bush, I think we can all agree, maybe even Republicans agree, was not the best economic steward. He was not the best president for the economy. Whether you look at unemployment, whether you look at the fact that net jobs created during his 8 years were a loss, whether you look at the fact that that the deficit we went from the highest surplus in American history, and he gave us the highest deficit of any departing president in American history. He was not a good economic steward. Can we stipulate to that?
Look, I think President Bush himself would rather that the economy was in a much different state when he handed it over.
Okay, so here's my point. Bush was not a great economic steward. I don't think, I know Democrats and independents don't think so. I think even Republicans, when they're honest like you are, will admit George Bush wasn't Herbert Hoover.
I think George Bush would say that he wishes he was in a different position.
Given that that's true, shouldn't Mitt Romney offer some kind of different economic plan from George Bush's, lest we go to warmed over 2008-ville?
Well, I think there is going to be a significant difference.
How's he different?
Well, the primary difference, and this was discussed at length. I don't want to repeat everything that our viewers may have heard on the talk shows yesterday, but the big difference, the number one difference right out of the box, is going to be a difference in the way we treat China. I think that both President Bush and President Obama have sort of coddled China. They're scared about doing something with them. China owns half our debt. What are we going to do about this monstrosity?
And they make half our things, too.
And they make, But I think you'll see that Governor Romney has been very vocal from the beginning of the campaign that we need a new relationship with China. We need to make China understand that they can't manipulate their currency.
Does he wag his finger like several more times at them? Well, how can Romney do anything more with China than Obama has done?
Well, Obama's done nothing with China.
What can Romney do? What can Romney do?
Well, I think the first thing you sit down and you engage them in this, and you don't negotiate out of fear the way Obama does. You negotiate out of strength.
Well, you say Obama's done nothing. We've gone to the World Trade Organization. We've accused them of manipulating their currency. Mm-hmm. We've done about what you can do with an economic and powerhouse like China. I'm not sure. You're not talking about war. What are you talking about?
We might want to stop selling our debt to them, which increases our bargaining position and makes us more.
Stop selling our debt to them.
Yes.
So now when we have these auctions of treasury bills, we say, I'm sorry, you're Chinese, you can't buy any.
No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about maybe we don't run the debt that way so that then, we don't have to sell our debt to the Chinese because they're the only ones who are willing to buy our country lock, stock, and barrel. Mitt Romney has a plan to reduce the debt so that we don't do that.
Okay.
But that's aside from the China policy. The China policy is that we engage them very directly, and we do it out of a position of strength and not out of a position of fear that, oh my God, they might not buy our debt. I really can't engage them now. And that's what Obama does. We need to go at them directly.
I get the rhetoric. It's good rhetoric. Give me some specifics. What specifically would Romney do vis-a-vis China that President Obama is not already doing?
Well, I think you'll see some...
wag his finger.
No,
talk with him more.
I think you'll see some. If it comes down to it, I think you'll see some unilateral action.
Trade sanctions?
That it would be. I think that's very likely. I would hope, and I think Governor Romney would hope, that we would be able to bring a broader coalition of China's trading partners into that to deal with China on a group basis. But if that fails, I believe you will see unilateral action from Governor Romney.
I find this incredibly ironic because I think Mitt Romney's friends on Wall Street and in the Republican Party very much support free trade and free markets. They love it that Chinese children can make very cheap products working at $1 a day that they can then sell to the United States, and they make an abundant profit from that, multinational corporations. In fact, I see it's the Democrats that are more likely to say, well, China or India or Mexico aren't fighting fairly, we need sanctions or tariffs because of unfair trade or labor practices. I just don't. Well, okay. I mean, Romney's all over the map on everything, so I don't doubt he once said it.
Again, I'm going back to your premise. If you want to look at where the contributions are coming from and where they're flowing to, I believe it's President Obama who is owned lock, stock, and barrel by Wall Street, not Mitt Romney. Okay.
Whoa.
So
now that's crazy talk.
No, that's not crazy talk. Wall Street has bought him lock, stock, and barrel. He is so in their pocket, it is just ridiculous.
Wow.
So now let's go to.
I can't believe you even said that.
I did, because look at where the money's coming from, Mark.
Look at the hedge funds.
Look where the money goes. The money comes from and goes to the president. It doesn't go to Mitt Romney.
It
from Wall Street.
certainly goes to Mitt Romney. It goes to Mitt Romney through his super PACs, through the Koch brothers, through all those secret, non-disclosed donations. I had no idea that money was coming in the billions.
And the Koch brothers don't work on Wall Street, so let's just take that equation off the table as well.
Look, when you look at Wall Street, it is President Obama that wants to regulate them. It's President Obama that supports the Dodd-Frank bill. It's President Obama that wants to raise the taxes on hedge fund managers so they pay the same rate as their secretaries. Mitt Romney is the guy who coddles Wall Street. Mitt Romney wants no regulation. Mitt Romney opposes Dodd-Frank.
I think Mitt Romney wants to lower the tax on secretaries so that they have a lesser burden that they're paying.
And how is lowering taxes going to cut that deficit? Is it just mirrors? How does that work?
Mark, we've talked about this. It's entitlements, and entitlements.
Cut.
The president.
You just told me you were going to slash Medicare.
The president. No, we're not going to slash it. We're going to create a voucher system, hopefully out of it, so that people will control their own health care. They'll be able to evaluate and purchase the policies with their vouchers that they choose to do. They'll get the coverage that's right for them, that they want to have, and we won't have this open-ended everything. Look, Social Security, same thing. Medicaid, Mark, we have to take a break. Even the president says reform entitlements and then does nothing.
We have to take a break. I don't think Mitt Romney's numbers add up, but we'll go to there. And I also want to go to just money in politics. I can't believe you said that Obama was owned by Wall Street. Whatever Wall Street owns in Obama, they own twice in Mitt Romney. Folks, you want to join this conversation? Please do. It's 888-488-MARK, 888-488-6275. We'll be right back after this.
Art, a universal language, an expression of culture, of self. And now, thanks to Empowered Women International, a way for emerging and established immigrant and refugee artists and artisans to find hope to earn a living while enriching the lives of all of us. Empowered Women International, making a better America every day. For more information on Empowered Women International's educational programs or to make a tax-free donation, contact cfrip at AOL.com.
Tell which kids have trouble with their eyesight. But that's not always the case. Even though 1 in 4 children may have a vision problem, eye doctors tell us the symptoms aren't always so obvious. We do know that 80% of all childhood learning is visual. And without good vision, kids can have trouble learning to read and may fall behind in school. For clues on how to spot the real-life signs of childhood vision problems and what parents can do, visit checkyearly.com. A public service message from the Vision Council of America.
Here again, the Inside Scoop with Mark Levine.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Mark Levine, talking presidential elections and Republican-Democratic politics as it relates to the economy, the single greatest concern of most Americans. My guest is Mike Lane, Republican strategist. He and I often hash it out on this show, and although we often disagree, it's always a pleasure to do that with you. Let me go back to the issue of money in politics, because you said that Obama's controlled by Wall Street. It's ironic to hear that from you. I go on Pacifica Radio every week. The Raucous Caucus, Tuesday nights at 7 p.m., 89.3 FM. You can check it out.
Be there or be square.
That's right. But I go there and argue with people to my left who tell me Obama's been bought out by Wall Street. And the point
they're right.
Well, has Wall Street given money to Obama? You bet. They've given money to Obama and every president in the last 100 years. What you find, though, well, I don't know how much Wall Street was given money in Jefferson's day, but I'll take your word for it. If Wall Street was, I'm sure they would. The difference is who represents Wall Street interests. First of all, I have no doubt that Romney is going to get twice as much money or more from Wall Street. I can show you articles of how hedge fund managers who supported Obama have now switched to Mitt Romney. Wall Street loves Romney, and let me tell you why. Because one of the things Obama is implementing is the Dodd-Frank law, which all the Republicans hate, which says, in effect, you can't gamble with public money. And right now, 90%, I just read this today as I was doing research for the show, 90% of derivatives trading is held in bank subsidiaries. And what that means, I know you know what it means, but for our listeners who don't know what that means, derivatives trading is kind of a form of gambling. It's basically where you gamble on someone's credit not being good, or you gamble on Greek bonds failing, or you gamble on the price of wheat futures going up and down. It's not your basic bank business. You're making loans to businesses and getting the money back and so forth. And the reason they put the gambling under the bank subsidiaries is very clear. Banks are protected under the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the FDIC, a wonderful Depression-era institution that protects all of us so that banks don't fail. And one of the things Dodd-Frank would do, and it's already starting to do, in fact, this article was about how J.P. Morgan tried to put more derivatives business in their bank subsidiaries. They said, well, wait, under Dodd-Frank, we may not let you do this. It's because if you gamble, do it with your own funds. Don't do it with funds that if you run out, the taxpayer has to pay for. This is a clear example, it seems to me, of how Wall Street would love to gamble under Mitt Romney. Because under Mitt Romney, they gamble, they make money, they get to keep it in the billions, they lose money, and the taxpayers have to pay for it. And that's really good for Wall Street.
Mark, I don't think you're going to see any more bailouts of any kind under a President Romney. I mean, I think the Republican Party is against bailouts. Take the medicine, do what it is that you need to do. But you're not going to see any more Wall Street bailouts. You're not going to see bailouts of any kind. It's the president who seems to be in love with the concept of the government will prop up this industry and prop up that industry. You know, it's the equivalent of industrial policy, which I think, it's the S word, industrial policy. It's all socialism.
I knew
it is. It's the S word.
But Mike, the FDIC, you say they're not going to bail it out. You're not saying the Republicans are going to end the FDIC's perfect record of never allowing an insured depositor to fail.
No. The insured depositors will be covered.
If they're covered, that money has to come from somewhere.
It comes from the insurance fund.
It does. But if the insurance fund runs out,
every one of us pays money for that.
Well, and the banks pay money for that. But if the insurance fund runs out, there's the taxpayer backstop that everyone knows exists. They've never had to use. But as the banks gamble and gamble more and more, there becomes much more of a risk that the insurance backstop will become us, the taxpayers, and we'll have to bail them out. What is wrong with telling banks under Dodd-Frank, you know what, you want to gamble with your own money, don't gamble with taxpayer money. The Volcker Rule. You have a problem with the Volcker Rule?
Here's the deal. I'm not a fan of banks gambling with public money.
I'm glad to hear that.
But that's not what they're doing. You're going just a step too far by saying they're gambling with their own money, they're gambling with their clients' money, and if they lose,
they're coming to us.
But it's not public money. It's insurance fees that they've paid to the FDIC that covers this. Now, we have new rules, and the new rules apparently don't work.
They haven't gone into effect yet because your party has been keeping them from going into effect.
But look at where we are. We got the president's buddy, Mr. Diamond, over there at JP.
Mr. Diamond is not a big friend of President Obama anymore.
Well, they were a month ago. When did they have their
4 years
out,
ago.
I mean, I remember distinctly Mr. Obama standing up there saying, and Jamie Dimon is the best bank manager that we have in this country today. And just on and on about Jamie Dimon, and so it has to be Obama's friend.
You know what's scary?
Who lost $2 billion overnight.
What's scary about Jamie Dimon is he is one of the best bank managers, and the fact that he lost $2 billion and admitted it after 3 or 4 days tells me that virtually everyone else is worse, that they're losing more money and they're hiding the ball, because JP Morgan was one of the few banks that rode out the 2008 crisis without doing some of the much stupider things that Countrywide and Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns did. I'm not here to praise Jamie Dimon, and Jamie Dimon isn't praising President Obama anymore. I know you know this. He was, when it was discovered that they lost that $2 billion on a bad trade by the whale, Bruno Ixel, the London whale, Bruno Ixel. When that was discovered, JP Morgan was busy lobbying the SEC and the federal bank regulators, saying, please, when you do the Dodd-Frank bill, we want the Volcker rule to be as small as possible. We won't lose any money. We want as much freedom to gamble as we want. And Jamie Dimon was representing a whole bunch of banks that wanted low regulation. I don't think you're going to claim to me that the Republicans want more regulation of banks than Democrats do. But you're not going to make that claim.
Here's what I'll assert, is that, in this case, it doesn't matter. I think Mitt Romney is opposed to more bailouts. He's been opposed to bailouts in the past. He would not have bailed out the auto industry. He would have let them go through a managed bankruptcy in the private sector rather than the public sector. However, no matter what a re-elected President Obama wants to do in terms of bailouts, or no matter what a President Romney would want to do in terms of bailouts, you're not going to get any more bailouts through the Congress. They've had it. They're done with it. It's not going to happen.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the auto industry, and I'm going to go there in just a second. But just to finish on Wall Street bailouts, Wall Street will get its bailout because Wall Street owns a number of members of Congress. Both parties.
Not enough.
In both parties, but they own them through the use of super PACs, through the Citizens United case, where basically they can funnel unlimited money very easily now, and it isn't even disclosed. So you don't even know. I mean, it's one thing to have a congressman that's bought. It's another thing to not even know who's buying him. I wish they would at least wear stickers on them. I'm owned by the Koch brothers, right? I'm owned by George Soros, whoever it is. At least we know who they're representing, because they're not representing us. One of the things Republicans used to believe in fact, back in the days of McCain-Feingold, which really aren't that long ago, 5 years ago.
Yeah, I think McCain-Feingold was actually 10 years ago. And it was,
no, it wasn't. It wasn't past.
Yeah, it was 01. It was 2000.
So really past that long ago?
I remember because I was chairman of the local party at that point, and it just destroyed our fundraising mechanism in the local party.
Well,
it was the worst legislation that I've ever seen.
You're a Republican nominee, 2008, John McCain.
And I came to the McCain train very late, despite the fact that I have a very close friendship with his brother. I came to the McCain train late on that because of McCain-Feingold. It was an awful piece of legislation.
I'm a fan of McCain-Feingold. It's one of the few things I like about John McCain, and one of the reasons is because it keeps you from having this unlimited money in politics. But let me put that aside for a second, because you may not even remember this. There was an alternative proposed to McCain-Feingold. It was one of my favorite names of any bill. It was the Delay Doolittle bill. It was great. It was Tom DeLay, and I forget the name of who Doolittle was. He was another Republican congressman.
Just call him Jimmy.
But whatever. I loved it. Delay Doolittle. To me, that was the ultimate in Republican campaign finance reform. Delay and Doolittle. But even the Delay Doolittle bill, what it said is, yeah, abolish all the restrictions. Yeah, let billionaires get whatever they want, but at least require every dollar be disclosed on the internet. The irony is, the watered down Delay Doolittle bill is more than Republicans are willing to agree to today. Even the United States Supreme Court in the Citizens United case said, we're not banning disclosure, but you have to go back and pass the law again, because they knew how hard it would be to get past a Republican filibuster. Here's my question. Even if you want billionaires to funnel billions of dollars into our system, which I strongly disagree with it, but even if you want that, Why can't the Republicans support disclosure? Why are they so in favor of secret money?
Mark, here's what I would do if I could wave my magic wand.
You're probably more reasonable than your party, which wouldn't be the first time.
I'm probably less reasonable than my party. I don't know. You know, I mean, I think they're very reasonable. But here's what I could do if I could wave my magic wand. We go back to candidates and political parties doing all the financing. You get rid of political action committees, probably unconstitutional, but if I could wave my wand, I could do unconstitutional things.
No super PAC.
You get rid of 527s, you know, if I could wave my wand. You go back to candidates and parties being able to raise any amount of money in any denomination
with
that they want, with immediate 48-hour disclosure on the internet as to what they got. You can get corporate money, you can get individual money, you can get millionaires, you can get union members, you can get, you know, whatever it is. Let the candidates and let the political parties raise it, force disclosure or require disclosure within 48 hours on the internet, and let the people do the research. Let the chips fall where they may.
Mike, your vision, I would say, is not as good as McCain-Feingold, but I'll tell you this, it's much better than the system we have right now. Because as you know, we have a system where people can secretly funnel money. We have an election just going on tomorrow, as you know, Wisconsin recall election. And what we know is that $27.5 million is going to, the vast majority from out of Wisconsin, is going to protect Governor Walker in the recall election, and $1.1 million is going for Tom Barrett, the Democrat. So he's being outspent 25-1, and the vast majority of it is undisclosed secret donations. We don't know whether they're coming from the Koch brothers, whether they're coming from Vladimir Putin, whether they're coming from China, whether they're coming from Saddam Hussein's heirs. We don't know where the money's coming from.
We know it's not coming from China and Vladimir Putin.
We don't know that. How do we know that? China has a corporation with some Americans. It's very easy. And your party, the heart of what I'm saying is your party does not, you may, but your party does not support disclosure.
Let me say,
why can't Democrats and Republicans come together at the very least on the Disclosure Act?
If there's any money coming out of Vladimir Putin's expense account,
slush fund,
whatever you want to call it, whoever accepted that money ought to be prosecuted.
We can't know.
It'll come out.
We can't know.
It will come out. We'll find out, and they ought to go to jail.
Let's go to the principle.
They ought to go to jail.
Let's go to
Unlike John Edwards, who was rightly acquitted, they ought to go to jail.
I agree with both of those things, but how are we going to find out without disclosure? You just talked about your vision, and your vision is unlimited funds, which I disagree with, but complete disclosure, which I do agree with. As you know, after the Citizens United case, the Democrats thought at the very least we'd have a bipartisan support of disclosure. In fact, not only do 90% of Democrats and 80% of independents, but 60+% of Republicans support disclosure. We want to know who's buying our politicians. You support disclosure. Why is your party continuing to filibuster the Disclosure Act?
I support disclosure on candidates and political parties. I don't necessarily
not on the
support,
super PACs.
You know, we know where the money's coming from. Come on.
Well, yeah, I mean, we know the Koch brothers give several $1 million, but we don't know exactly how much. We don't know how much Sheldon Adelson is he giving.
Sheldon Adelson is going to be in for $100 million by the time this is over.
That's what I'm afraid of. That's not, but we can't compete. That's exactly right. Folks, if you want to join in the debate, we'd love to hear your 2 cents. Just dial in 888-488-MARK, 888-488-6275, locally 571-749-1166, or you can comment on my website at marklevinetalk.com. We'll be right back after this.
Too many women get hit by their boyfriends and husbands. Too many women are pressured into having unprotected sex. Half of the people in the world living with AIDS are women. It doesn't have to be this way. Together, we can change this reality. Let's strive for a world free of violence.
At Volunteers of America, we don't just give kids a way to stay off the streets. We give them the tools they need to reach their full potential. We don't just help the elderly receive needed care. We help them live life to the fullest. We don't just provide food for homeless individuals and families. We provide job training and placement so they can buy groceries. Volunteers of America is a national organization that for over 100 years has provided programs and services that allow people to overcome their challenges to become vital members of their community. At Volunteers of America, we don't just help people, We help people help themselves. Find out how you can support the programs that are working in your community. Contact Volunteers of America today. Call 1-800-899-0089.
Drivers face all kinds of distractions.
Guys, stop playing, no?
Before your wireless phone becomes one of them, stop. Drive safely. Keep your phone in easy reach and dial sensibly. In bad weather or traffic, call later and use a hands-free device. Remember, with wireless, safe.
Here again, the Inside Scoop with Mark Levine.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop, debating the economy with my friend and political sparring partner, Mike Lane. Mike, we talked about Wall Street bailouts, and you mentioned the auto industry bailout. Now, I am not a fan of Wall Street bailouts. We discussed, I certainly don't want places to be too big to fail, but I am a fan of the auto bailout, and I would suggest to you that voters in Michigan and Ohio are as well. In fact, I think whatever you think of President Obama's leadership on the economy, this is a shining moment. At least 1.5 million jobs were saved, and frankly, if he wins the election in November, I suspect it'll be because he wins Ohio, and in winning Ohio, he will have the electoral votes he needs to carry the presidency. It wasn't just the workers in the auto plants, it was auto detailing parts, it was people selling cars.
It was downstream supplies.
Absolutely, it's a huge amount, and Romney famously told Detroit to drop dead. So it seems to me that on the auto industry bailout, and we're going to get every penny back too, so it's a successful bailout.
When? I mean, I
give us a couple more years.
Yeah, well, whatever. Look,
we're on track
Here's the thing. We'll never know what the outcome would have been on the Romney plan, which was a managed bankruptcy in the private sector, not in the public sector, because we didn't go that route. Many of us believe, as does Governor Romney, that was the appropriate way to go, that you would have had all kinds of opportunities for people to have bargain investments in the automobile companies when they were not doing very well, and that they would have continued to conduct their operations, their business operations, through bankruptcy as they did through the government bailout, and that those downstream jobs would have been saved regardless. So, it's all a matter of, but we still, GM, the president is out there saying every dime that I gave GM has been paid back, and he's exactly right. But none of the $17 billion that George Bush gave GM has been paid back, not a single dime. They still owe us $17 billion. When are the taxpayers going to get that $17 billion back?
GM is doing really well. In fact, in the May jobs report, one of the things that auto sales were up. That's the one shining light in that jobs report.
Right.
But one thing, when you talk about the managed bankruptcy, because I don't want to rewrite history here, and of course I wasn't not in those backroom discussions.
We'll never know.
Well, but I think we do know this. We know that a number of private corporations were approached, and they tried to get them to take over. And it was only with Chrysler had this complex deal with Fiat that President Obama managed to stitch together, or his aides, in a matter of a week or so. I mean, very quickly. That was a managed bankruptcy. That was a private company. Fiat's a private company. Chrysler's doing pretty well today. GM, they couldn't find a buyer. And as you know, Mike, when you can't find a buyer in bankruptcy, the whole thing is liquidated.
Once you declare bankruptcy, the buyers would have come in because they were waiting for them to fall flat on their back. Why buy the company for 20 cents on the dollar when you can get them for 5 cents on the dollar? I mean, that's the bottom line in terms of picking those things up. Mitt Romney knows a lot about that.
Mitt Romney bought a lot of companies for 5 cents on the dollar. And he leveraged.
Did very well with them.
Well, let's talk about that too, because Bain Capital has certainly been a big discussion.
I'd love to talk about Bain Capital.
Let's talk about Bain, because it's going to be, I think, one of the big issues in the campaign.
Why?
And why? I'll tell you why.
I mean,
because
let me set the stage here.
All right.
The Obama administration, the Obama campaign has just sunk $7 million worth of ads into key states on Bain Capital, and it hasn't budged the polls so much as a half an inch. Why would you still want to talk about an obviously losing situation for you?
Talking about budging the polls, we know that in Massachusetts, when he ran against Ted Kennedy, he was neck and neck until Ted Kennedy brought up the things he did at Bain Capital, and then Ted Kennedy won in a landslide.
Candidate Romney of '94 is not candidate Romney of 2012.
I would hope he's better. But my point about Bain Capital is this. You cannot dispute, and I don't think you will dispute, that the goal of private equity is not to create jobs. The goal of private equity is not to make the economy run smoother. The goal of private equity is to make as much money for the corporate raiders, which is what we used to call the private equity. Sounds so nice. The corporate raiders make make as much money for them as they can. Frankly, whether the company survives or fails is not the first goal. The first goal is get as much money in your pockets. Let's talk about how this works. Let's make that about how this works, because a lot of people don't know how this works. What most corporate raiders do, and what Bain has a specialty of doing, is you don't even borrow money based on your own funds. You borrow money based on the company you're going to buy. So you take no risk at all. You say, oh, that company, that's worth $100 million. I'm going to borrow $100 million based on that company's worth, buy the company with money I borrowed based on their own worth, pay myself luxurious fees for it, and then if the company succeeds, I make even more money. If the company fails, I still get my fees. That's not a role for helping the economy. That's a role for enriching Mitt Romney, and he did very well enriching himself.
Mark, it is. You just said the key thing there. If the company survives and thrives, you make even more money, and that's.
But you make money even if it fails.
That's the objective. Well, of course you do.
What do you mean? Of course you do. What happened to capitalism, where if you succeed, you make money, and if you fail, you lose money? Isn't that what capitalism is supposed to be?
Look, if you succeed and the company thrives and survives, then you make more money. That's the objective, is to make more money.
But they can't lose.
Mark.
They're borrowing money they don't have to buy a company they don't own, that if it fails, they still make money in their pockets while thousands of people lose their jobs.
Notwithstanding the president's campaign attacks on Bain Capital, which President Clinton has renounced, which the mayor of Newark has renounced.
Quite renounced.
Which
he hasn't quite renounced. I'm not saying private equity is evil. I understand they make a lot of money for themselves. What I'm saying is it doesn't help the economy. And someone who knows how to maximize money to put in his own pocket doesn't mean he's a good leader for the American people.
The company's been studied. 78% of their investments turn sweet. 22% of their investments.
They don't disclose all of their investments.
22% of their investments turn sour.
We can't trust those numbers.
A 780 batting average in any league is a superior batting average.
Bain won't disclose all the companies they're involved in. You can't possibly know the statistics because Bain won't tell us. Why won't Bain disclose all the stuff they did while Romney was there?
Bain
won't do it.
Bain's former top guy is one of President Obama's spokesmen and communications advisors.
My point is, when you
say, ask him why they won't do it.
When you say they're 78% successful, they haven't disclosed all of the deals they've been in. They haven't disclosed half the deals they've been in. So what someone did is they looked at the deals that Bain did disclose, and they said, oh, well, 78% were successful. That's a meaningless statistic.
If it's a meaningless statistic, then I would expect the former head of Bain Capital, who is now a close Obama confidant and advisor, would be out there talking about how Bain is misrepresenting the facts and misrepresenting the statistics.
I don't think he talked down his own company.
And I haven't seen that yet.
I don't think he talked down his own company. But here's the point.
But he's Obama's guy.
Yeah, but here's the thing about success, all right? Corporate raiders define success as to how much money the corporate raider makes. That's their definition, right? Corporate raiders are successful if they make hundreds of millions of dollars. They don't define success by what helps the economy, what helps the workers, what helps America. You know the case of GT Technology. We've talked about that, the paper company where the workers, thousands of them lost their jobs and the company went out of business and Bain made a hefty profit. If Bain makes a profit, that's successful for Bain, right?
No, Mark, you want to make as big a profit as you can.
Of course you do.
You want to make a bigger profit than just your fees. You want to have a successful outcome.
Here's the heart of the question. What makes you think that someone who's good at corporate rating, that Carl Icahn would be a great president of the United States, that T. Boone Pickens would be...
I never said that Boone Pickens and Carl Icahn would make...
But Mitt Romney is saying, because I was so good at corporate rating, at private equity, I'm going to be a good president.
I think he was talking about private equity investing. He wasn't talking about corporate rating. Now,
I don't think there's much of a difference between them.
I think if you look at Bain's record compared to the record of some of these other companies, you'll find that Bain's record is sterling.
But the heart is, someone who can make a lot of money, Donald Trump has made a lot of money, all right? I think you and I are going to agree that Donald Trump would not make a good president of the United States. Just because you can make a lot of money, Ross Perot, I think, would not have made a good president of the United States.
He wouldn't be my first choice either.
Okay, so the fact that someone can make a lot of money is a skill. It's a skill Romney has. He started with a lot from his father, and he made a lot more. Good for him. American dream. That doesn't mean he'd be a good president. Is that fair?
I'm not saying that the fact that he was successful in business makes him a good president.
Isn't Romney saying that?
I think he's saying that it qualifies him to be president without a doubt. And then you look at the policies that he's espousing. That's what's going to make him a good president, is when he gets the economy back on track, he gets America back on track, we start growing, we start economic expansion, we start creating jobs, and we put America back to work. That's what's going to be a good president.
Here's the thing. We don't have to guess about Mitt Romney. We don't have to say, well, he did okay in the Olympics and he did okay at Ben Capital, he's going to be a great president. When we ask, do these skills translate into the public sector, we have a model to check it out. He was governor of Massachusetts. He ran a state, and Massachusetts was the 47th best growth in the United States. And let's face it, 46 states were better, and ever since Deval Patrick has been governor, Massachusetts has done much better. Romney makes a lot of money for himself, but you put him in charge of a state and he harms the state. Why should we put him in charge of the country?
Well, let's get the facts straight. And this was widely talked about yesterday, so I might be repeating for our audience. But when Mitt Romney was inaugurated, Massachusetts was flat on its back, 51st, even behind the District of Columbia in terms of job creation and growth back then. Over the course of the 4 years, they had improvement. When Mitt Romney,
47.
When Mitt Romney left office, they were 30th. They went from 51 to 30th. Now, you aggregate that all together and you come up with your number. But the trend is clearly. No. You know what? If I could get a President Romney in there that would take us from the job creation we have now and put it on the same improvement trajectory that he had was governor of Massachusetts, that would be nirvana for our economy now.
Mike, the point is that you can compare Massachusetts to the 49 other states. And 46
and the District of Columbia,
which
were above where Massachusetts were.
And 46 did better than Massachusetts. 46 did better in those 4 years than Massachusetts.
And where were they at the end? They were, he had gone from 51st to 30th.
Well, it's always fun to play with the numbers, right? You're looking at total
what Obama
jobs.
Does,
Well, but the 47th, this is not a sterling. If you want a sterling record, I mean, look at Rick Perry. Rick Perry actually had a good record in Texas. You and I talked about that.
Rick Perry,
he had a much better record than Mitt Romney did. So, but my point is that these businessmen's skills do not necessarily translate into the public sector. And in Massachusetts, he increased the debt. He increased the spending.
He was dealing with an 86% Democratic state legislature. There's only so much that you can do when you're facing that kind of headwind.
Yeah, but in the United States, I'm not sure what his policies. It goes back to my other question: would they have to be different from Bush? We only got a minute in this little segment, but just real quick, you mentioned China. How else would they be different from George Bush? Mitt Romney's policies.
Well, I think a much more focused emphasis on reducing the deficit. I've said many times that my hugest disappointment with President Bush was his disregard for the deficit and the accumulated debt. And I think Mitt Romney would be 180 degrees from President Bush's attitude on that particular score.
And when we come back, I want to get specifics on exactly how he handled the deficit. I'll tell you one thing real quickly, though, where he's 180 degrees from George Bush, and that's on immigration. George Bush is probably the most pro-immigrant, pro-Latino Republican president we've had. Mitt Romney was to the right of Rick Perry, to the right of Newt Gingrich, to the right of some pretty conservative people on immigration. He's going to be hurt with Latino voters in the fall.
We'll see.
We'll see. Folks, if you want to join in, it's 888-488-MARK, 888-488-6275. The local number is 571-749-1166. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to have you join the debate. Please do. Mike Lane and I will be right back, where I'm going to find out from him, what would Mitt Romney do to reduce the deficit? I haven't heard a convenient plan. We'll find out.
One day these rats were playing in the woods. One in some matches and that's no good. Listen to smoke before you give it a try.
Only you.
Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about nothing very nice. Homeless minds. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire.
Why don't you just wash your car at home? When I wash my car, everything runs down the street and down into the storm drains.
With all the chemicals in the soaps and waxes, the last thing I want to do is poison my own drinking water.
At least here, it's all contained and recycled on site.
That's why I also take my car in for oil changes instead of doing it myself. I might take a chance on spilling stuff.
You know what the best part is? What? More time to kick back and watch the game.
How far would you go to protect the planet?
I want you to build an ark.
Here we go. Okay, that's good. Oh, okay. Ow!
Maybe there's another way.
People, the flood is imminent. Is it too much to ask for a little precipitation?
Go to fightglobalwarming.com to find out what you and your community can do to reduce global warming pollution.
Somewhere around the world, there are men and women of the armed forces risking their lives, helping rebuild communities after natural disasters, collecting toys for needy children, tutoring kids in school. These are your sons and daughters who work to keep us safe, secure, and free. Dedicated men and women who put their country first.
Here again, the Inside Scoop with Mark Levine.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. I am your host, Mark Levine, debating the economy and the election, Obama and Romney, with Mike Lane, my guest. He's a Republican strategist. This is your last chance to call in. This is something that doesn't happen a lot. Live TV where your voice can be heard. We'd love to hear from you. You don't have to agree with me or Mike. You can disagree with both of us. You can agree with one of us or the other. But feel free to call in. The local number is 571-749-1166. The toll-free number is 888-488-MARK. 888-488-6275. So, Mike, I asked you before the break, you said Mitt Romney is going to reduce the deficit. Well, everything I read that analyzes Mitt Romney's plan says this won't even come close to reducing the deficit. He's going to keep the Bush tax cuts. He's going to keep the millionaire tax cuts. You say he's not going to slash Medicare. Where are the savings coming from? Not defense.
All right, look, he's endorsed in concept, in principle, the Ryan Plan.
Okay.
The Ryan Plan has been scored by CBO. And it will
doesn't bring us back to budget
no, it gets
neutrality.
It gets us back to a balanced budget in 30 years.
In 30 years.
In 30 years.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
So I think he'll probably be a little bit more aggressive than the Ryan Plan. The Ryan Plan was written less aggressively than Congressman Ryan wanted it to be because he was under instructions to come up with something that might entice a few Democrats to come over and compromise. That didn't work. But yet, nonetheless, that's the priority of Governor Romney.
Mike, in 2013, we're heading for a fiscal cliff, they're calling it.
Yes.
The Bush tax cuts expire, the Obama tax cuts expire, the payroll tax cuts expire, the estate tax cuts, pretty much all of that expires. And frankly, when we go off that fiscal cliff, it will be harmful to the economy because anytime you raise taxes that dramatically, that suddenly, you have a problem. However, for the deficit, that cliff would actually bring us back much closer than 30 years, probably bring us back to balanced budgets in 10 years. Need I remind you that the tax rates were pretty much where they will go in 2013 under Bill Clinton, and the 1990s were some of the best economy we've ever had. Let me suggest to you this, that cliff may hopefully just force a compromise, whereby something along the Simpson-Bowles lines, we do raise some taxes, we raise more taxes on the millionaires, we raise taxes on the hedge funds, and yes, we also look at entitlements and everything else. Shouldn't Democrats, Republicans work together to fund a grand bargain like this?
I'd love to see something happen where we work together and come up with a reasonable compromise. However, it's President Obama himself who has ruled out Simpson-Bowles.
No.
Yes, he did. He ruled it out. He just said, thank you, go away. I don't want to talk to you anymore.
He did not. He said that this was the beginning. The Republicans did not endorse Simpson-Bowles. The Democrats did not endorse Simpson-Bowles.
It was the President's commission. It wasn't the Republicans' commission.
It was split equally between Democrats and Republicans.
But the President appointed every member of the commission.
And as you know, the commission didn't actually approve their plan either because they required 14 votes and they got 11 votes out of 18. But the heart of it is not the specifics of the Simpson-Bowles plan, but the general understanding we need some combination of tax increases and spending cuts. And it seems to me that the Republicans, when they all stood up on stage, Mitt Romney among them, and said, would you take $1 in increased taxes for $10 in spending cuts? And everyone from Michelle Bachmann, Ron Paul, all the way down to Mitt Romney said, nope, nope, never going to raise taxes, never, never, never. Grover Norquist, you are our God.
All right, let me tell you the dirty little secret.
They probably didn't say that last part, but they thought it.
You do and say things in primary campaigns that you don't do when it's time.
I'll accept that Mitt Romney has no core. That's true. That's true.
Every one of those 8 people on stage would take the 10-for-1 deal. Every one of them.
Okay, so what you're saying is Mitt Romney is just basically lying during the primary.
I'm saying that you position yourself a certain way in a primary, and
but that's a very cynical view.
Let's face it. And the president's not cynical either, I suppose. Come on.
I think that the president offered several plans, including the grand bargain he proposed with Speaker Boehner.
I haven't seen it. Where is it? Is it on the internet any place? Nobody has seen the president's
There was a whole
grand
article
plan.
in the Washington Post about this.
I haven't seen it.
Where exactly what Boehner rejected.
Where is the government's document? Where is the president's document as to what he offered? I haven't seen a presidential plan.
It was $800 billion.
Let's not forget, it's been 3.5 years since the Democratic Senate has even addressed passing a budget.
Well, you call it the Democratic Senate.
When are we going to have a budget out of the Senate? Harry Reid, call your.
You want to know when we're going to have a budget out of the Senate?
Next year, when the Republicans take over.
I'm going to pull it out now. The moment we have the Senate respect the Constitution of the United States and have majority rule, because this ancient thing called the filibuster is nowhere to be found in this Constitution.
No,
and
it's in the rules of the Senate.
It's in the rules of the Senate, which got there because of mistake, because Aaron Burr didn't think it was necessary to even have, because he said that people would, of course, stop talking. The Republican Congress has used the filibuster more in the last 2 years than every Congress in all of American history put together. How can you talk about the Democratic Senate when you can't even name a post office without the Republicans filibustering it?
Okay, look, 2 things. Number one, I don't know exactly what article or page it's on, but if you read here, you will find that each house of the legislature is empowered to set their own rules.
That's true.
Okay, so
that's true.
Filibuster, fine.
That's true.
Secondly,
each house, it's Article 1, Section 5. For people who are following along.
Thank you so much. Secondly, the filibuster is the last resort of the minority to protect the American people.
But it's the first resort of your party.
To protect the American people from the egregious abuses of the majority, and that's what it's been used for. And it's only because the Democratic Senate is so far left and so uncompromising and so ludicrous out there, Looney Tune, that they've had to resort to it.
Mike, if the Democratic Congress were to put forward Ronald Reagan's vision, they would be considered socialist and be filibustered by the current Republican Congress.
I can assert that's not true.
Richard Nixon, that had the Environmental Protection Agency. Ronald Reagan had things like the Earned Income Tax Credit that said that actually the working poor should get money. It's very different from Eric Cantor, who wants all the poor people to pay more in taxes. The Republican, it's not the cap and trade bill. The idea that you economically trade pollution credits, Republican idea. The Obamacare.
A very bad Republican idea.
The Obamacare was a Romney care. It's a Republican idea. All these things where Obama has reached to the middle and across the middle to what were formerly Republican ideas, the Republicans filibuster. You can't tell me that filibuster has been a last resort. It's been a first resort under the Obama administration.
It's been a last resort against the excessive, just so far out left-wing
anything Obama
proposals.
Does is considered excessive by the Republicans.
Obama happens to have, a spot reserved as the most far-reaching liberal president we've ever had in the history of our country.
Not even close. Lyndon Johnson, Franklin Roosevelt, are you kidding me?
Obama is so far to the left of Lyndon
ridiculous.
Johnson, it's ridiculous.
That's ridiculous. Speaking of left, though, one last thing I do want to talk about, because it is tomorrow, even though I really, really fear the result. I'm nervous. I'm very nervous. And if it happens, if we get an upset victory, I'll be drinking a lot of champagne tomorrow night. But I am nervous that Governor Walker of Wisconsin, the guy who is synonymous with trying to shut down the rights of working people in America, may just squeak through his recall election. He did have 25-1 in his funding, because let's face it, corporations, instead of having to worry about bargaining with workers to give them health care and decent wages, all they have to do is buy politicians who make sure the workers don't get the health care and decent wages. I am very nervous that we're going to lose this recall election, and in doing so, that unions in America will be pretty much decimated. And I just want to say one last thing, and I know you want to respond. Ronald Reagan appreciated unions. Ronald Reagan may have done the thing with the air traffic controllers, but he was head of his union in Hollywood. To this Republican plan today to basically destroy all the nation's unions is one of the main reasons why middle class and working class wages are so low.
Mark, I'm sort of agnostic about private sector unions. Some of them do a good job, some of them don't do a good job. I think that we can agree that there's more than enough blame to go around for what Detroit got itself into, and the unions deserve their share of the blame for what Detroit got itself into. But I'm not agnostic about public sector unions, and neither is Governor Scott Walker of Wisconsin. Public sector unions are they're unnecessary. They're just I don't fathom why we have public sector unions. They ought to be outlawed. They have civil service protections. They
depends on the state.
Well, we don't need public sector unions. They ought to just go away. And I am hopeful that Scott Walker's prevailing tomorrow in the recall election will signal the death knell for public sector unions.
Well, I'm afraid of that because I think that the private sector unions have already gotten their death knell. They're already decimated. We've gone from a country where 25 to 30% of Americans were in unions to 5 to 7%. The public sector is the one place where we still have 25, 30% in unions.
People in the private sector can opt to join unions. They can opt to start unions.
None of your party. Your party makes it almost impossible. You have these so-called right-to-work laws where they can't even pay their union dues.
Oh, right-to-work laws are a heaven send. Why do you want to be forced to join a union against your will?
Because it's a race to the bottom, Mike. One of the reasons why middle-class wages stayed pretty decent from the 50s through the 80s and the 90s is because while union workers were negotiating to get good wages, the other people who were in the non-unions, they got the same wages.
Where's the economy booming? The economy is booming in Texas, right-to-work state. The economy is booming in Virginia, right-to-work state. The economy is...
What you're saying is that if you treat workers bad, you know where the economy is really booming, Mike? In China. In Mexico, in Thailand. Let's just bring back child labor. Let's get rid of the weekends. What an unnecessary thing that unions brought us. Let's throw away overtime because we can really get Mexican children to work really hard in our factories. That is the Republican vision.
That is why I'm agnostic about private sector unions.
I'm glad to hear it.
But, anyway.
I'm very much worried about Wisconsin. I think it will be seen as the death knell of unions.
Of public sector unions.
No, it's not just public sector unions. Your party is not just against public sector unions. Whether it comes with voting rights.
Well, I don't know that we have a position on it. I'm against public sector unions. I think they're destructive. I think they're disasters. I think that
I think your party's against private sector unions as well. Let's face it, the public sector does not get. There's this myth that I think your party talks about that claims that public sector people get paid more than private sector people. And I got to tell you, as a lawyer who used to work in the private sector and went in the public sector, I took a massive pay cut. And that's generally what happens.
Well, okay, but Mark, you are the 1% that everybody hates.
That's right. That's right. That's all true. But that's the point. Most people who are working in the public sector do so because they believe in some cause, whether they're a teacher or a firefighter or a government lawyer. And they're doing it knowing that they're going to make less money. Judges make very little money. Lawyers make more.
Yeah, judges make less than lawyers, but I don't believe for a minute that most public employees are making less than equivalent in the private sector.
I think they are.
It's not.
I think you can compare janitor to janitor, secretary to secretary. You will find that they make less.
Oh, I'll take that bet.
I don't think so. Teachers as well. One last thing. So where's the economy going? We haven't talked that much about Europe. I fear, first of all, I don't think the euro should ever have been created. I think we discussed this. I think it was a huge mistake. I said so at the time.
In retrospect, it certainly is.
I said so at the time. And even though I think it will cause even more economic damage in the short term, in the long term, I think Greece should get out of the euro. And really, if they're not going to form the United States of Europe, and they're not, they shouldn't be in a monetary union together.
I got no idea what Greece is going to do. They are, they're perhaps the least of it. Spain is next.
That's true.
And Spain is now being talked about too big to fail.
That's right. Well, one of the things that I hope we can prevent throughout the world is this whole too big to fail concept. If you're so big that your failure will cause destruction of the entire economy, you shouldn't be allowed to get that big at all.
Mark, yesterday I met a
5 seconds.
upcoming Democrat, Sammy Walsh from Frederick. She's either the president or an actress or like Ronald Reagan Bolt. She's on your side.
Oh, well, I'm glad to hear it. Mike, thanks for coming on the show. If you want to watch this show again, go to marklevinetalk.com.